But it is.
We spoke during the break in terms of timing, and I don't think he realized this was going to be the last witness, so he's figuring out who he intends to call. We both think it's going to be relatively expeditious.
Yeah, I'm trying to make an effort to keep calling people back and forth to get out on cross-examination, a lot of stuff that I was going to ask on direct. So, at this point, I don't see, recalling anybody, and we have remaining witnesses that have been subpoenaed to be here 20, 30 minutes tops with each one of them.
Not on mine now.
Well,
I don't have to without that, you know.
Right, well, what I'm saying is, at the most on my direct, I've got, as I was, I don't know how long it will take me to cross Mr. Reckenwald, but I only have, as it stands right now, 3 witnesses, and they're current employees who are sequestered.
On the record, you want to before 2:30.
Before 2:30?
And I'll go on the record.
Okay.
I'll go on the record now.
Then you may proceed with your arrest.
I'll go on the record now saying we both agreed that we didn't need to do long closings.
Yes, I've never been a long closing kind of litigator. Delete that.
Off the record.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Reckenwald. Board has heard you before. For the record, we need you to tell us what is your
Yeah, I'm the George Reckenwald, a director of public protection in Ocean County.
everybody here okay?
And yeah, back here it's hard to tell if I'm projecting out.
What is your present assignment?
Well, I am the director of public protection, and in that capacity I have the Division of Beach Safety and Ocean Rescue, the Division of Corrections, the EVAC Division, Animal Control, a medical examiner, everything that entails public protection other than the Sheriff's Department.
And what is your history of employment with the Volusia County?
Nearing 16 years. Started out in Public Works, out in Road and Bridge specifically as an operations supervisor. And I was promoted up to division director, eventually a Public Works director, and over here to public protection.
And I'm sorry if you already said this, when were you appointed, brought into the Public Protection Department, whether it's acting or permanent?
I was brought in around, it was Christmas time, 2011.
Approximately how many employees are under your supervision in the Department of Public Protection?
There's close to 900 in full-time employees.
I want to direct your attention, of course, to the Beach Services Division, and ask if you could tell the board, they know a little bit about it, but what types of assignments, type of employees do you have in the Beach Services Division?
Well, there's 3 major types, really. You have the, which you've heard several times today, the triple certified beach safety officer, which they are law enforcement, they're certified ocean rescue, and they're EMTs. We also have another layer of employees that are full-time lifeguard and EMTs. Not that many of them, but there are a few. And then we have a large contingent of lifeguards, and pretty much all of them are part-time employees.
When you first became affiliated with the beach department, do you have some goals or visions or things that you wanted to impart to the employees? If so, why?
Well, I was asked to go over there and take on the public protection department. They were already, they were in the middle of another, in terms of beach, they were in another high-profile case that was going on. They'd been on the tail of several other high-profile cases that did not shed the division in a positive light. So myself to the staff, and you could tell, I had reports from the director at the time, that the morale was low, and that, you know, they were feeling, you know, very, very negative, but I had told them that we're going over there, that we were going to start a new day, you know, that we would resolve the issue at hand and we were going to move forward. But the only way to move forward was to stop these big issues that we were having, these, you know, that were reflecting so negatively on the division. I mean, that being the case, I told them we would have to have zero tolerance on any kind of issue that was, you know, going to cast a big negative light on the division.
When you talk about the issues, without not going into specifics, but the cases that you're referring to, were those cases that involved either alleged misconduct or misconduct by other beach employees?
That's correct. They were in trouble for various reasons, and you know, misconduct of the employees.
And did you feel that the employees that when you first went over there and talked to, did the other employees who weren't involved in these cases that we're discussing, did they feel like the actions of those few that sort of put the whole department under attack?
Yeah, I mean, I interviewed and talked to several of them, and they just had a general feeling that, you know, there were a few bad apples, and that, you know, they really wanted things to move forward. They just felt terrible that they were being lumped in with some of the other people, and they're being, you know, in the community, they're becoming you know, kind of a joke as far as what, you know, their behavior was.
What did you mean when you said zero tolerance to these employees?
Well, kind of, basically, I think Director Swanson, who came on later, but borrowed kind of what I had said also. I said the same thing, you know, it's something I often tell people when they come on, and I said it again to them, that if, you know, what they're doing, kind of in the reverse, what you're doing, you're comfortable with it being on Channel 9 News or the news, meaning, you know, obviously a save or good things that you're doing, helping people out, you know, that was good. But if you were uncomfortable with it being on there, in other words, you were making negative news, it could not be tolerated. And that would just bring out more and more negative scrutiny on the division and a deeper hole that they would have to dig out of.
To be clear, were you referring to both on-duty conduct and off-duty conduct reflecting negatively on?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I even gave an example, and I think I even suggested that, you know, I know a lot of them, you know, they live a beach lifestyle, and I appreciate that I even suggested that maybe they tone that down for a while, that they, you know, try to have fun maybe out of the area if they really felt like they had to go cut loose. A lot of young people in the division, but I just felt like, you know, that anything that was going to be done here in this area would be heavily scrutinized.
Are you familiar with whether or not any of the beach employees, besides your having spoken to them, do they have any sensitivity or diversity type training, particularly the law enforcement officers such as Mr. Snipes?
Yeah, it's my understanding that in the wake of one of the cases, just before I had taken, I would say within a year when I took over, one of the cases was ongoing, and it involved harassment, and my understanding is that they all took, every single full-time employee went ahead and retook sensitivity, diversity training.
Is that something the county provides?
The county provides it, they provide it regularly, and then I think on top of that, law enforcement people have a requirement to take it. I'm not sure what it is, I would have to check the standards people, but they take it on a regular basis.
Cultural diversity type thing. How about when you were talking about the county providing it, are you familiar with the county legal department actually providing some additional training?
Yeah, my understanding, yes, I am, and that's what actually I was referring to, is I think the county legal department went over and held a special training in the wake of some of these other cases.
Any question in your mind that your directives and your position on these issues regarding conduct on duty was clear to the employees who spoke at the beach?
I think it was very clear.
Would Mr. Snipes have been an employee that received that speech from you, so to speak?
Yes.
When Director Swanson was hired January, I think he testified January 2013, were you involved in hiring him?
Yes.
And what, tell the board, just in terms of the image of the beach and the things you described, what was it that you thought Mr. Swanson would bring to the table?
Mr. Swanson is a man of high integrity and high accountability.
Excuse me, this is going far afield, and now he's being asked to comment on the character of someone who's not even accused of doing anything wrong here today. I don't know what Mr. Swanson's integrity is at this point, with whether or not my client violated the merit system rules.
I didn't ask him to comment on his integrity. I asked him what things about Mr. Swanson led him to select him for the position for the beach department. I think it's relevant to his overall mission for the beach department at the time he took it. Okay.
I mean, I'm not going to present my case at this point.
When Mr. Swanson was selected as a director, were you present or were aware of him having, you heard him describe him having met with the employees of the department? What do you know about that?
Yeah, he did meet with him, and I
Same
believe I was
objection.
present.
You just went right back to the same subject.
No, I'm not talking about Mr. Swanson's integrity. I'm talking about whether or not, I asked whether he was aware or knew that the employees had been placed on notice by Mr. Swanson.
Mr. Swanson already testified to that.
Okay.
Nobody disputed
I'm going
testimony.
to allow him to continue.
Were you aware of that?
Yes, I was.
I'm sorry, did you say you were
I
present?
believe I was present. He had multiple meetings, and I know I was president of at least one.
We've talked about the social media policy, the county social media policy. As a department director, if I could approach the witness, this is the same thing. I'm
Oh,
Are you familiar with the social media policy that was instituted in January 2013?
Yes, I am.
And the document that I just handed you, is that something that was provided to you as a department director?
Yes, it was.
All right. Can you tell the board, were there discussions when this policy was instituted about why it was instituted
Yes, there were.
for the directors? I mean, were the directors, did Mr. Rhodes talk to y'all, or?
Yes.
What was the purpose behind it?
Well, the purpose is, we had a new technology really that has emerged, and it was changing the way we handle information, and both in a positive and a negative. I mean, we can move information out to people. Of course, the county has Facebook pages and things now to get information out. But the problem was is that with people being able to express themselves now to massive audiences, I think there was a fear that, you know, are they representing the county position? You know, if they're a county employee and they are putting information out there at, you know, are they saying it as an employee or not saying it as an employee? So, you know, it starts becoming, you know, reflecting on the county as an employer, which was very concerned to, I think, the manager.
As a department director, were you told to have all the employees under your supervision be given a copy of this policy and sign for it?
Yes.
And then did you do that?
Yes.
Would that have included Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
Can you tell us, with regards to this case, bringing this into focus for the Snipes case, what in the social media policy was relevant from your perspective? And I'm jumping a little bit ahead in terms of violation, but since we're talking about it, I think it might be easier for you just to address that now.
Well, I'm reading actually from the memo that goes out with it, which becomes a part of it. Inappropriate postings that may include discriminatory remarks, harassment, retaliation, threats of violence, or similar inappropriate or unlawful conduct will not be tolerated and may be subject to disciplinary action up to and including termination. basically, the same principles and guidelines found in the county merit rules
Yeah.
would apply in your online activity. That's another part of it.
Mr. Reckon, I'd like you to take a look at this document and please identify it.
This is actually, what I just read from was the department, this went out to the department directors from Mr. Modes. This is the social media policy that came out to us. This is kind of the media policy in its policy format.
Would you look at the second page of that and see if it tells us if you can identify there's been no objection from Mr. R as to the authenticity of this document?
Right, and it's, the second page has Todd Snipes' signature on it.
When did he sign that policy?
He signed it on April 4th, 2013.
I'd like to admit that as county exhibit 2. Ms. Reckenwald, I want to direct your attention now to July of 2013. At some point in the July 16, 17 timeframe, were you made aware that there was an issue regarding Mr. Snipes and perhaps a Facebook post or questionable text messages?
So,
And can you please tell the board what you initially recall about that?
well, it was Terry Sanders that came to me and said that there'd been an issue, that there'd been a discovery of some inappropriate texts, possibly Facebook postings. And so I ordered to get an internal investigation going to try to get to the facts, find out who, what, when, and why.
And from your perspective, at that point, did you know whether or not Mr. Snipes had actually posted anything or sent any text messages?
I did not.
Was that the purpose of the
That's
interim?
the investigative purpose.
Who did you direct to conduct that investigation?
Dave Annis, who's our internal affairs person at this time.
Were you ultimately made aware of the conclusions of the internal investigation?
Yes, I was.
And what did you, what if anything, did you review when the investigation was concluded by Captain Annis? What was provided to you and what did you review?
Well, of course, he has a summary sheet, and then there are statements from Mr. Snipes and other fellow officers. Of course, there were a timeline that he had put together, and also a the screenshots themselves of the text and posts.
Did you have any concern when you reviewed the internal affairs file that the initiating party or the original person who brought the information to the attention of the county had not been interviewed?
No, because, to me, I mean, the pictures were there, I didn't see what we gained by that. It was just a matter of, they're here, that these are the posts, and in his testimony, or in his interview with, I should say, with Dave Annis, he admits that he sent them, so he admitted they were wrong.
Was that, in your review of the case, did you review the statement of Mr. Snipes himself?
Yes.
And you've heard the testimony today about the admissions and which posts, one he initiated and the others that he sent. Was that, were you aware of all that after you reviewed everything?
Yes.
After you reviewed the investigation, did you reach a conclusion as to whether or not Mr. Snipes had violated any either Volusia County Merit Rules and Regulations or Beach Department directives or Beach Service directives?
Yeah, we did.
And the board has been provided a copy of the final termination letter, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, the intent letter included those same violations, is that correct?
Yes.
Just in general, can you tell us, without going into specifics on facts at this point, or which facts supported what, in your initial review, did you feel which things were, which directives or merit rules were violated?
Well, it starts off with unprofessional conduct while on duty. He's on duty, it's clear. I mean, the records to show that, especially the text part of it.
He admitted it too.
And he admitted it, so there was no question on that. You know, the section in there on the departmental division standards, 11-01, you know, they shall not engage in any conduct which constitutes neglect or which is likely to adverse the discipline, good order, or reputation of the division. Even though such conduct may not be specifically set forth. So even though,
Excuse me, that was read incorrectly. It actually said neglect of duty, which is very important.
What do you read from
The same 11.01.
okay, outstanding. They shall not engage in any conduct which constitutes neglect of duty or which is likely to adversely affect the discipline, good order, or reputation of the division.
it? Did you feel, and
That or is important.
did you feel that he was neglecting his duties when he was sending the messages while on duty?
Well, certainly you could make that argument. I mean, he was, first of all, he's paid to be watching the keep order at the event that he's at, and he's on his personal cell phone having a text conversation.
Okay. And then you said that or was important in that.
Well, because of the reputation of the division part, you know.
Okay. All right.
So then, you know, did you want me to continue?
Yeah, you might as well go ahead and take the opportunity now to divorce for listen testimony as to the actual facts. So let's go ahead and tell them what facts that they've heard, or what facts that you knew of, supported your decision that he had violated.
Well, there's been a lot of discussion about the racial part of it. The text that included the picture of Paula Dean and the word underneath it that was offensive. I can read. I understood that the joke was on really Paula Dean. However, the problem is that he chose to put that out there. He did not have to do that. He puts it out there in the time frame that we're talking about, in the aftermath of the trial, conclusion, and verdict. And it contains that word. I mean, he did not have, he's not being paid to be on Saturday Night Live or be on these things. He is a law enforcement officer on duty, and he essentially uses that word. So that word is racial in character, and even though it was, might have been put back on and making fun of somebody else, I found it offensive. The other thing is that this all takes place, he starts basically this conversation. So while, we've pecked apart and said there's little pieces here and there, well, you got to put the whole together, and when you put it in whole, he starts the conversation, he comments, he's actively taking part in the conversation, and he's commenting on some of the other offensive material. Maybe he wasn't the one that posted it, but he's the one that started it, and he was involved in it from that point on. So,
Did you think the picture of the caricature, you have these, did you think the picture of Trayvon Martin or the caricature that said these Skittles are to die for, that he responded, laughed out loud?
yeah, the laugh out loud, right. I thought that was again, very offensive. Again, you cannot ignore the context in this situation. You cannot ignore when it's happening, the context of the whole conversation. So I thought that was very offensive. Yes, some of the other people put some other things on there. And then, of course, again, I think we all understand that's Paula Dean's faces on everything up there. It's identified as the George Zimmerman trial. And again, you laugh out loud, nice. So I just found that offensive, and I do find it, so it definitely falls under derogatory ethnic remark. And then, of course, the next one coming up is any conduct on or off duty that reflects unfavorably on the county. Well, I think it does, and then on top of that, eventually, which you knew it would, is it generates negative publicity. So we're right back to where we were when I got there, year and a half before. You know, that we're now back and it's in the media and it's certainly not positive. So we feel like they had done it. And
Can you talk about the timing, you talked a little bit about the timing of the Zimmerman verdict, and then this, and him beginning this, doing Facebook post and beginning this. Was this that part of your consideration? In other words, was it everything taken together?
yeah, I have to, from my position, I do have to sit from, you know, I have to take a broader view. And that certainly was part of the consideration, because, you know, whether or not he, you know, racist, he used incredibly poor judgment given when he was doing this. I mean, right in the aftermath of this, and it's an inflammatory time. There's, you know, he may not have been aware of this, but I mean, I'm aware of the fact that you know, there were fears that we could have riots and things in the wake of that verdict. So, I mean, you know, we were given notices at my level and certainly at other levels to be aware, this is a sensitive time. And I think that it was in the press. You couldn't, like you say, you had to have your head in a hole if you didn't know that was going on.
Okay. And the next one.
Yeah, and then the last, of course, is really code of conduct, and, you know, focusing on the last part of that. They're expected to conduct themselves in a manner to give credit to the county, government, public officials, fellow employees, and themselves. And again, and this falls back, it's a little bit redundant, but certainly his actions were not giving positive credit to us. I mean, they were detracting. They were detracting to the mission.
Did you review Mr. Snipes' personnel file prior to making your decision?
Yes, I did.
And what about that influenced your decision one way or another?
Well, it made it difficult. I mean, I don't think anyone, this is the hardest thing I do. I mean, you know, I present budgets in front of people. I have to go out in the public and speak a lot. Deal, you know, complain, people upset, all the time. But this is the single hardest thing I have to do. And when I look at Mr. Snipes, and he had a very good record, and it was very difficult. I could not believe he had done had such a poor judgment. I was heartbroken. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, it was just like all this work that we've done, and then, you know, and then he does that and does that in that time.
In the context of his years of service, while on the one hand you're saying that he had a clean record, did you expect better or more of a person with that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think there's nothing in there to indicate that he didn't know what was going on. He certainly was here. He's been part of, and he was not involved in, or not implicated in any of the scandals or anything that occurred, but he certainly was part of the group that went through, you know, the media frenzy and some of the other things that, you know, occurred. He definitely was there for that.
Did you also consider that the fact that there had been, that you had talked to the employees, Mr. Swanson had talked to the employees, the social media policy had put them on notice about expectations? Did that enter into your decision?
Absolutely. I mean, you know,
In other words, if he was brand new to the department, just been there 2 years.
right. And, you know, but even then, I will say, getting me to the last part of the decision, you know, gets into, well, I took all that into consideration, but then I also have to take into consideration all his co-workers, the government as a whole. You know, there's concerns now that, you know, he is potentially, you know, disenfranchised or cause mistrust with a large portion of the citizens we serve. And,
Explain what you mean by that.
well,
Are you talking about his effectiveness, his
Yeah.
ability to be impartial or appear impartially?
I think, yeah, I think, well, first of all, when they act, you know, there's him and then there's the entire group. And after a while, people forget it was maybe him per se, but, you know, and the last thing they'll remember that it was the beach patrol or the beach ocean rescue. So the problem gets into, I think, in the high standards we have to keep in law enforcement is it has to be impartial. It has to be fair to all citizens. And when they do things like this and partake in this, they should show an incredible insensitivity to what's going on and to, you know, certain members of our society. And so the problem gets into, say something does happen, you know, and very legitimately he acts, maybe he has to draw his gun or and shoot somebody in the commission of a crime or anything. And if there's a person who's a minority involved, I mean, he's going to be called into question. Our whole division will be called into question, and himself, you know, is you know, which Todd's here today, you know, and so that's one of the ways that heaviest of all. And then on top of that, I mean, you've got, there was real anger too, and I think after this, and I don't mean on myself, but I mean on the citizenry who, you know, I think we're feeling a certain segment, you know, that we're feeling, hey, you know, we're not getting any justice. So, and I don't, you know, I have no comment on the case. I just know that there was definitely people out there who were upset. It was on the news, you can see it. And so, you know, they're out there. My folks are part of law enforcement, and they have to keep that peace. And, you know, instead of helping the peace, I think we may have, Mr. Snipes said, it contributed to, you know, stoking that conversation that really didn't need to be stoked at that time.
Just so that I understand, are you saying that the fact that Mr. Snipes did the Facebook post and sent the text messages, that was reported by the media in close proximity to the discovery by the county?
Yes.
And do you have any knowledge as to how the media became aware of it?
I do not.
After issuing the notice of intent to terminate based on the things you described for us, did you meet with Mr. Snipes to give him an opportunity to tell you anything that could change your decision?
I did, and you know, he came in and, like you say, he came in, he admitted that he'd sent them, and he admitted that they could be seen as offensive. I appreciated that. You know, we had a conversation. I did ask, and you know, part of it, you know, probably one of the frustrating things for me in my position is, you know, people, they make mistakes, you know, but then what are you going to do about it, you know? I mean, you know, I think he expressed some remorse, but I think I asked him, well, what would you propose to do to mitigate it or do? And he just said, I just want to go back to work.
When you asked him about that, were you talking about mitigating the impact on the department or on his effectiveness?
Well, both, everything. I mean, you know, was there anything he could do to, you know, show that that was just a one-time event? You know, what could he do to, go on out and, I mean, talk to see, it's easy for some of these people who may say they weren't offended or what have you, you know, but you know, what about the parties that are, you know, that are involved, the group that's involved here, you know, somehow make amends to them or talk to them or explain themselves or, you know, apologize to them.
Are you talking about trying to regain the public's trust, him trying to regain?
Yes.
And did he give you any indication that he had any idea how to do that?
No.
Were you disappointed?
Yes.
Why?
Believe me, again, going back, this is the toughest thing I do. You know, when we look at these things, least from my perspective, I've got a lot of investment. I think, you know, one of the other guys testified, Dave Annis, you know, about putting them through school. And I don't know for sure, but there's a very good likelihood that we paid for a lot of Mr. Snipes' training, maybe not, I don't know for sure, but sitting here. But we have a large investment in him, and he's been a good officer through the years, by at least according to his evaluations. So, you know, when I go into that, I'm trying to find out, you know, what can I do, or what can we do to resolve or help the situation.
We talked about trying to change the decision on termination, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah,
Is there something-
right, it's a very difficult, right, I mean, I go into the thing, you know, almost rooting for them to show me where I'm wrong, you know, and, or what's something I don't know about, and that did not happen. I mean, it was pretty, you know, yeah, he was sorry, admitted he did it, but he really didn't have, you know, he didn't really indicate, I don't think he indicated to me that the gravity of the situation, and that, you know, and the damage that he had done, or the damage of the perception.
Are you saying you didn't think he got that? That he didn't seem to get that?
Not even that indication at all.
Ultimately, did you make the decision to terminate Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
And without going over things over again, can you tell us, I mean, there have been questions about individual photos and stuff, can you tell us the factors that weighed heaviest in your decision?
Well, yeah, it wasn't like you just blurted out something, I mean, or sent out one thing. I mean, he engaged in this, it started on, I think, a Saturday, off duty, and went on for a couple of days. You know, that definitely, you know, showed me that it was not just a momentary lapse in judgment, it was poor judgment over a period of time. And, you know, and the fact that, you know, I felt like the division would be just misperceived, you know, that we, you know, had these type of individuals that were not sensitive to, you know, a large portion of our population. And they're out there in a law enforcement capability.
As the director for Volusia County in the past, have you had occasion to take disciplinary action against employees for using derogatory or ethnic remarks?
As a director, or is this director?
No, in your history.
Yes, I have.
Okay, and without going into specifics of those cases, do you recall the level of discipline that you imposed on the employees that were found to have violated that policy?
Yes, three that I'm aware of off the top of my head, they were given lengthy suspensions. One was also, in addition, asked to retire.
And were these individuals law enforcement officers?
No, they were not.
Is there a distinction for you?
Yes,
in-
there definitely is.
Okay, tell us why.
Because, again, the public trust is paramount here for a law enforcement officer.
What department were these other people?
They were in public works there. Happened to be, one was in the landfill, and one was a road crew and a road maintenance crew. And,
So while you,
yeah, two of them were in the road maintenance crew, one in the landfill.
while you imposed lengthy suspensions on those individuals, you, in this case, based on this violation, as well as others, decided to terminate Mr. Snipes. And tell us what the distinguishing things are for this case.
Well, like I said, the biggest of all is that he is a law enforcement officer, and that he has to have the trust and the faith in the system, so to speak, that's out there. People have to be feel that they're being treated fairly, and this type of behavior, you know, gives them this perception. Whether it's accurate or not, I don't know. I mean, they're not going to know what his record is when he's out there, or his coworkers, you know, that are now with him out there. You know, they're not going to know that. You know, so they're just going to remember what they saw, what they heard. So that was the there is the, kind of the additional thing here is that through the technology, the world we have, the other cases were very specific, they were within a very closed group. One of the cases that, the guy did profusely apologize to his coworkers. He still was punished.
Did any of those cases reach the media?
None of them reached the media.
And did any of them involve the violation of social media policy?
None of them, well, and there was no social media involved, and there was no social media policy violation.
The individual that was asked to resign, was he a supervisor?
Yes, he was.
Just one second, get out of your way. Mr. Chairman, I admit the evidence counting 3 and 4, I think, and one is the Facebook posting, the other is the text message.
This is the entire one? Yeah.
Okay.
Met before.
Yep.
Had an opportunity to sit with you and Mr. Snipes and Mrs. Jones. So that you would have an opportunity to talk with you about why you should resign. And I have an understanding of your frustration with that process. But let's go into the issue of punishment that you decided here, which was termination. As we sit here today, sir, do you still believe that was the appropriate punishment?
Yes, I do.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about this. We're going to your decision. And unfortunately, I'm just going to have to kind of skip around here. But I'm going to do my best. If you don't understand the question, please let me know. Tell the panel specifically what you reviewed with respect to Mr. Schneider's personal record that helped you get to the conclusion that he was a, quote, good employee.
Well, his evaluations were all good. I think he only had one negative thing about, it's off the top of my head, but it was one thing about missing some meetings or missing a meeting or something. I mean, he was generally a good employee, had some accommodations in there. He definitely had some good rescues. He was a good employee.
Okay. The reality is, on the evaluations that you reviewed with respect to Mr. Snipes, he had always been rated exemplary.
Yeah, I think they were in that token, the upper.
There's a difference between good and exemplary.
Well,
You agree?
I go over his entire life. I would say he's got a lot of exemplarity in there, yeah.
Is there anything in there, in 24 years of service to our county, that indicated to you that Mr. Snipes would treat, in other words, during his 24-year career, that he has treated a minority differently than anyone else?
There is not.
Okay, so when you said that you're worried about, I think you said which Todd is gonna show up,
Right.
it sounds to me like you think that he might in some way be, have some prejudice?
No, he just showed very poor judgment in this situation, and how do I know he's not gonna show poor judgment again? How do I know it's not the start of something? I don't know, but definitely,
So in 24 years, has Mr. Snipes ever shown poor judgment in the performance of his duties on behalf of his department in this county?
not that I have a record of.
And so you think now going forward, based on what appears to be a one-time incident of what you call poor judgment, that's now clouded his ability to move forward with clear mind?
And they have.
Let me ask you this right now, sir. If Mr. Snipes was patrolling the beach, as we sit here today, and you're under, do you think he would treat a minority any differently than he would someone who he's trying to rescue?
It's hard for me to say, I don't believe he would, but unfortunately, he has put one big blank, a big bang on his record now. But yes, I think he would probably say what was out there.
Regardless of their race. Is this man racist?
I don't know what's in his head.
You've seen 24 years of service. I mean, would you agree with the statement that if somebody is a racist and is performing duties for the county, at some point over 2.5 decades of service, something's going to appear where they might have treated a minority differently than they would someone who's Caucasian?
Rephrase that again one more time.
No problem, sir. If somebody in the performance of their duties harbors racist tendencies or racist thoughts, that would be sort of difficult to hide over 2.5 decades of service to this county. Would you agree?
Difficult, maybe. Impossible, I can't say.
Now, Mrs. Jones asked you about this zero tolerance that you instituted, and you spoke of, pardon me, as well as Mr. Swanson. Is that correct, sir?
Yes.
Those are your policies, correct, sir? Those aren't county policies.
That's correct.
Nowhere in your report does it say that he violated your policy of zero tolerance, which is that basically, should our journalists do their job, which is investigating and reporting on what our government does so our electorate stays informed, and you don't like the way they spin a story, that employee is subject to being fired?
Objection.
I don't.
In other words, it sounds to me like you're blaming Mr. Snipes because of the way Andrew Gant at the News Journal chose to spin this story.
Objection mischaracterizes the testimony.
Well, that's why I'm asking him to clarify it.
You're suggesting what he meant by it.
Well, that's cross-examination leading to certain. So the zero tolerance applies to any story that paints, that is reported by, say, the News Journal, that paints the county in a negative light, that employee is subject to being terminated?
If that employee did the act that was commented, that was reported on, and it was of a nature that violates our policies.
Okay, so you just said that your testimony is if the employee committed the act that's discussed in the News Journal or in the press?
If the employee commits the violation of these merit rules, as I explained to them, and it's reported in the press, not necessarily that they would be terminated, but there's not going to be tolerated. I think that, when I say there's a no tolerance, I mean, policy, meaning it's not going to be overlooked. You know, it's gonna be dealt with. There's no, hey, you know, you can kind of consider that your, you know, how in our progressive discipline world, you know, we give them a verbal and a written, what have you. Well, I mean, they were given, you know, extra training and extra warning that, you know, if you do something that sheds negative light on this division, you know, it's gonna be handled.
But that's your policy. That's not the county's
It's
policy.
not my policy, it is how, in my position, you know, I have the ability to, I'm an reporting authority, and I have decisions on progressive discipline. So, you know, I have latitude in there to decide where we're going with some of these things. And sometimes, you know, if it's minor, or we tend to use progressive discipline. We look to see, can an employee rehabilitated, or can the situation, or can the division, you know, withstand the discrediting that has occurred. So that was my point to the division when I spoke to them, is they can't take any more of that.
Okay, so let's talk about that. When you say take any more of that, you mean any more bad publicity?
Any more bad behavior.
Bad behavior. Okay, now there were cases, and Ms. Jones asked you a little bit about that, you talked a little bit about that in your testimony, in which beach patrol was accused of some wrongdoing. And, is that correct, sir?
Yes.
Tell the panel about that, please. What those cases were.
Well, I have to go, because I was not charged with it at the time, but there was cases where we had, I think, affairs that were going on amongst employees. We had, I think we had people, there was misconduct between senior lifeguards and alleged misconduct between senior lifeguards and younger lifeguards.